right, this is for both of you. Now, you both have a political background, so how will your political connections be able to help us here in Monroe County? You can go ahead and start.
Well, I do have considerable experience in the political process, both in Tallahassee and Washington, probably close to 30 years. I think with regards to my political connections, as you know, I'm a member of the majority party in Florida. I'm a governor's appointee to the state executive committee of the party. And I have very close relationships with leadership and legislators, both in the House and the Senate. In one perspective, we sort of grown up together. But I've been on the outside challenging them to move forward policies that address the needs of the people of Florida. And those relationships will be instrumental in helping me to move forward policies and legislation which address the needs of Monroe County.
Much like my opponent, I have some years of experience in Tallahassee as well. 4 years as an elected official, of course, and I think that's really where the relevance lies. We live in a world of turbulence in which we have sort of this recycling of individuals, or a revolving door, if you will. And having worked with members of both the majority and minority parties, some who will be joining the Senate as well, it's important to carry those relationships forward. And one thing that I've stressed to anyone who's understood the landscape of Tallahassee is Tallahassee really does not have room for wallflowers, people who are fence travelers. And one thing that members of the majority party have always told me is that there's a level of conviction that I possess, that even being a member of the Democratic Party, they respect my opinion. And as a result of that respect, I've been able to push initiatives through. And I think those relationships will be tantamount to good legislation and good policy for Monroe County.
As our moderator said after the last debate, one of the two of you are going to be the next senator for the Florida Keys. And one of our treasurers is Florida Keys Community College, which struggles with enrollment decline and budget cuts. Because of its size and because our geography warrants 3 separate campuses, one in the lower Keys, one in the middle Keys, and one in the upper Keys, the current state funding formula that applies to all of the other colleges really has the effect of short-shrifting Florida Keys Community College. If elected, this is for both of you, will you commit to providing financial support for Florida Keys Community College over and above that provided in the state funding formula? And Scott, we'll start with you.
Yes, absolutely. I'm a product of a Florida community college, and I think it's important that there are flaws in Florida's funding formulas within education, including community colleges. And any time you've got uniqueness, whether it's geographic, whether it's cultural, whether it's ethnic, it's important to take into account in these formulas addressing those needs. Anyone who has traveled along the Keys, that stretch from Key Largo all the way down to Key West, should understand the dynamics and the challenges of that geography. And because of that, it requires additional expenditures for not only capital, for physical plants, and other needs. And so that formula needs to be adjusted in order to meet the needs of the Florida Keys Community College.
Specifically to the funding for Keys Community College, it's interesting to bring this question up because in one of the more recent forums since the primary, had a chance to talk with the president of Keys Community College. And I think beyond just the funding formula fix, which I'm absolutely a proponent of, it's going to be important to develop strategic partnerships with existing universities. One thing that we found just in a brief conversation was that the marine biological program that Keys Community College has is almost parallel to the 4-year programs at the University of Miami and Florida International University. There's an opportunity there to create not only research and grant dollars coming down and impacting all 3 of those institutions, but more importantly, creating an uptick in revenue based on things that can develop as a part of those strategic partnerships. So I'm definitely a fan of really trying to go after major research dollars on top of the budgetary dollars allocated to Q School.
Before we get to the next question, I just want to remind everybody, especially my fellow Republicans back there, if everybody's whispering, it's still loud. So if you need to talk, please go outside. So with that, Naja.
I've got a question. This is for both of you. I'd like to start with Dwight. Regarding health care, Florida is listed as having the 2nd highest percentage of uninsured inhabitants in the country. Many Monroe County residents fall into that category. Governor Scott has announced that Florida will be opting out of federal health care initiatives. Where does that leave us in terms of health care reform?
Well, that news is very unfortunate that Governor Scott has chosen to take that route. And really, one of my initiatives as a member of the Florida Senate, and hopefully I can get members of the Florida House to get on board with this as well, is to try and reverse that notion. We do have an opportunity as a state to opt in to the federal health care legislation that would ultimately serve our state in a tremendous way. But in the short term, there's still an opportunity to develop really a public-private system within the state, as long as we can understand that, first and foremost, we have some of the best public hospitals that in the United States, whether it's Jackson Memorial in Miami or Shands up in Gainesville, phenomenal teaching hospitals, phenomenal public institutions, and public hospitals. And I think that if we can expand the outreach of those institutions in a broader way, we can then capture some of those folks that are currently uninsured in Monroe County. But moving forward, as a state, and Monroe really has to understand this, we, as a collective of 18.5 million people, have to be about the business of letting the governor, as well as state leadership, know how detrimental the impact of taking a position that harsh is going to be for a state in which we have a significant population over the age of 60, as well as a significant population uninsured.
Well, in 1999 and 2000, I was the Director of Health Policy in the state of Florida under Governor Jeb Bush, and I oversaw the largest study of the uninsured in the state of Florida and the 2nd largest study of the uninsured in the United States. And I have worked and pushed for more than 10 years to address the needs of the uninsured in the state of Florida. I think that in this country, with the dollars that we spend, which is more per capita than any other nation in the world in healthcare, no one in this country or this state should be without health coverage and health insurance. Now, with regards to the Unaffordable Care Act, which was passed by the administration the first 2 years of our president, the problem with it is that our Medicaid program is beyond broken. Our Medicaid program consumes over $22 billion a year of the state's budget. That is 1/3 of our entire state budget. When dollars go into a broken program, such as Medicaid, at that level, it takes dollars out of education, it takes dollars out of infrastructure development. So, first and foremost, I will continue to push hard, and as a member of the Senate, I will have a much stronger voice to ensure that regardless of someone's status or age or employment, that they will have access to health insurance and health coverage. The population that's between the age of 55 and 64, especially for a spouse who is younger than the one retiring, falls into a gap where they find it very difficult to have insurance. But I think it's important that we move cautiously in taking a federal government handout, so to speak, which is a mandate, and expand a program that has the potential of bankrupting the state. And so there are a number of programs. The Children's Health Insurance Program, which was developed in part when I was in graduate school, which is a private entity which is very effective at delivering health care. I'd like to expand that as well.
So you do support the governor's decision to opt out of our health care plan. Is that true?
I will say that I think I have a level of support for being cautious about expanding the Medicaid program. I think we can fix the Medicaid program, but that needs to be concurrent before we expand it.
So you support what the governor wants to do?
Yes, but I'll provide an alternative. I can address it. We can expand the kid care program and allow parents to move in. I proposed that 10 years ago. And you'll find very few parents will tell you that they're dissatisfied with the kid care program. Many parents will tell you how dissatisfied they are with the Medicaid program. There are people that have to travel 8 counties to see an orthopedic surgeon in Medicaid. So expanding Medicaid, when we don't have the specialists to provide the care, will be a failure regardless who's paying for it.
Just to switch tracks and call it. There is a moratorium on oil drilling in Florida waters. And there's been a lot of pressure lately to lift that moratorium. And I just wonder how you would vote. Both of you, I guess I'll talk with Mr. Bullard. How you would vote if indeed the moratorium would come up for being lifted.
I would wholeheartedly vote in opposition of lifting the moratorium. The reality is this, folks. Dollars make sense. And what I mean by that is S-E-N-S-E, sense. When we talk about a $162 billion coastal industry here in the state of Florida, annually, that's how much we make from beaches, hotels, etc. $162 billion. The idea that we would put that at risk on a gamble for drilling, for something we won't see proceeds from. And this is what they told us. We probably will not see proceeds within the next 10 years. Well, what would those proceeds be? Those proceeds probably would not go beyond $20 billion total over the lifetime of the drilling project. To put an annual $162 billion industry at risk for $20 billion over the lifetime of a project, that's a gamble, and it's a gamble I'm not willing to take it, and neither should any Floridian. So I would absolutely oppose any lifting of the moratorium on oil drilling.
Today, I'm not convinced that we have both the demonstrated science implementation nor the regulation to ensure the safety of moving offshore drilling closer to Florida's coastline. So until such time that there is evidence, experience, and a significant amount of data that the industry is being regulated to avoid the mishaps that we've had in the past, I would not support offshore drilling being moved closer to our coastline.
Thank you. Before I go on, I just want to say, we've been doing this a long time, guys, and polite applause is good, it keeps people going, but boos are unacceptable. If you want to murmur, well, then you can leave. These guys are putting a lot of work in here. It's disrespectful. And it's just not right. We have a big airport out there. You can run up and down naked booing. Jenna.
This is for both of you. What would you say are the two main political differences that separate you two candidates? Dwight, you can start.
Oh, wow. I think that the two main, having worked in Tallahassee now for the last 4 years, is that as much as we can talk about the likelihood of voting this way or that way, in opposition of oil drilling or in opposition of something that the majority party has made a priority issue, the reality is that I have the freedom, being part of the minority party, to actually vote for the people that I represent, as opposed to the policies that are oftentimes being pushed on us here in the state of Florida. And I could elaborate and say what those two are, but I think that even goes beyond just two. Because when issues come up that are detrimental to the people of the state of Florida, the reality is I have the flexibility. I don't have to worry about someone taking my parking space or moving my office or doing all the things that happen when someone tries to buck the majority party and vote in opposition of leadership. They know where I stand, and there's a willingness not only to work with them on things that we can agree upon, but they understand that there's a line that gets drawn in the sand when it comes to things that are going to detrimentally impact my district. So I think that's where we are definitely going to disagree.
Well, I think that with regards to our political differences, I think that first and foremost, I'm really more of a moderate Republican. I'm a fiscal conservative. I don't believe we should expand government. I think, and I know from experience, there are both private solutions to many problems. I think that small businesses are going to turn the economy around. It's not going to be turned around by creating more government jobs. And I think that with regards to representing the people, I am here for the people. No one party owns this Senate seat. It doesn't belong to any one ethnic group. It belongs to the people. And the problems that we're facing are complex, and they require a problem solver, I think, with private sector experience. And whether it's healthcare, whether it's education, I mean, I am strongly in support of parent choice in the education system, in the public education system that we have. And I think we have very distinct differences in our political approach to that.
Before I ask this question, I'd like to point out something, and thank you both for this. Your district has 500,000 people in it. Monroe County has about 70,000 people in it. The fact that you guys have come all the way down here on several occasions to several candidates forums is terrific, because you could go tell us to go screw ourselves. We are tremendously grateful that you care about Monroe County and Key West. We appreciate that. It's a specific question, and it's a philosophical question having to do with the Florida Senate, and the timing of it is pretty interesting. And it's just a straight yes or no question. You can explain your answer if you want to us both. Should a governor's appointments to the Florida Supreme Court require Senate confirmation, which is incidentally going to be on the ballot this fall for Floridians to decide? Please explain your answer. Representative Bullard?
What we're trying to add to the Constitution sort of mirrors what happens in Washington, D.C. And it really boils down to whether or not you feel Supreme Court appointees should go through the public scrutiny of a second body. Part of me absolutely feels as though one person, one party, one entity should not have total control over the appointment of a Florida Supreme Court justice. But at the same time, having worked in a very, very partisan environment in Tallahassee, you also have to question whether or not someone who is highly qualified and very much able to do the job in an effective way would make it through the scrutiny of a process like that. So I say all that to say that I'm going to be making a decision like most of you when you step in the voting booth on November 6th or before on whether or not I'm comfortable moving in the direction the federal government uses to appoint Supreme Court justices, because that's really the question that we have to weigh, is whether or not we like the way Washington, D.C. and their approach towards Supreme Court selection has worked, or whether or not we disagree with that slightly and that it should remain the same. So although the question is ideological and sort of fundamental at its root, it's a decision I'm literally going to make on November 6th.
I think it's important to differentiate the Florida Supreme Court from the federal Supreme Court. Federal Supreme Court justices are appointed for life. For life. In the Florida Supreme Court, they are not. In fact, we will all have an opportunity to decide whether or not a number of our Supreme Court justices are going to keep their job. I think that there should be a proper forum for the public vetting of these candidates for the Supreme Court, because they do make major decisions. But unlike the federal government, they are not appointed for life. And the voters have an opportunity to basically kick them out of office if they're not happy with their job they're doing. So I would be cautious with regards to creating a situation where we could have what happens in Washington every time the Supreme Court nominee is presented to the Senate, and it becomes very partisan. And I'm not convinced that that's healthy. But that being said, I haven't had conversations with the Supreme Court justices to even get feedback yet with regards to what their perspective is, both pros and cons. So I would want to have that discussion before I finalize an opinion.
All right, I'll start with Dwight. Our current administration has turned job creation into the first and foremost objective of the state of Florida. Do you think the current administration is going too far in its quest for economic recovery, perhaps tossing aside some important environmental and community affairs safeguards?
Yes, 1,000 times yes to all the underlying questions. The reality is that the current administration under Governor Scott has really more been about job deletion than job creation. Let's just be frank. Anytime you're talking about local municipalities that are having to lay off teachers, firefighters, and policemen in exchange for the soft promise of private sector job creation, I think is really, it's bad math. It's bad math. When the governor came in proposing the 777 plan and the creation of all these thousands of jobs, no one could have told anyone that would result in the unemployment rolls going up. And although Florida's unemployment rate technically has gone down, we're still 1.5 points above the national average. And part of the reason that it's been so stagnant is because we are sending so many public sector employees to the unemployment lines. And I cannot, and really have not supported a number of the initiatives that have resulted in millions and millions of taxpayer dollars leaving the state of Florida on the promise of job growth with nothing from the private sector making any guarantees that those jobs are going to come here. We've seen tax incentives go out the door to companies, again, with the promise that they will bring jobs to the state of Florida, and there are really no jobs to be had. And we can't continue to go at that rate and expect our economy to sustain itself. So I think there's another way, and hopefully can offer an alternative.
I don't think the administration is doing enough, and I hope the voters send new people to Tallahassee. Too much was done too fast. There was little consideration to how the impact of dramatic reductions in public sector jobs was going to have on the economy. People in this state are hurting. They need jobs, and to move too quickly to reduce the number of public sector jobs when private sector jobs don't exist has I think in some degree has been challenging and been harmful. That being said, we have to reignite the economy in Florida. We were far too dependent on the construction industry. When that fell apart, we had people who were not only without jobs, but we created what I refer to as middle-class homeless. And I think that too much of Tallahassee is not connected with the people of Florida. And I think especially in Southeast Florida. And so I think we need to take a different direction. We need to ensure that these dollars that are going into stimulating private sector jobs are not being wasted. If you look at what happened with Digital Domain, which quite frankly was a program that was passed with the prior administration, but this administration continued to implement it, and dollars were wasted. But I think we have to reignite the economy. We have to create jobs. We need new solutions to do that. But at the same time, I don't think we need to be putting our public workers on the street with no place else to turn. We need to figure out how we can foster an environment that will create the private sector jobs so that we can move to, reducing perhaps the size of government in a fiscally responsible way, but provide alternatives for that employment.
Thank you, gentlemen. That's it.